It feels like yesterday when those fateful words were first uttered. What's up, Star Wars nerds? Welcome back to the channel. This is the moment that I have been waiting for. If any of you were with me when we were going through the Book of Boba Fett, because we were doing a watch party every single night, you'll know I had some contentious opinions about the Book of Boba Fett. There were so many of us that were so excited to see Temuera Morrison get back on screen as Boba Fett and start kicking some ass. Yeah! And yet, when we got to the end of the series, I couldn't help feel like Boba Fett had really toned it down. He'd gotten his butt kicked a bunch of different times, and he wasn't really the character that I was kind of hoping for. And I feel like sometimes it's tough. You got to turn around, you got to take a look at yourself and say, well, was that the character he's meant to be? For me, yeah, but we've got an article from Vanity Fair here with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni talking about why they did what they did with Boba Fett, and this is their explanation. But before we get started, let me know down in the comment section, do you guys feel like they did justice to Boba Fett, or did they do a disservice to the character? But let's hop in. So the article starts with, there's an old maxim that states, never meet your heroes. It may also apply to villains. The person behind a legend can never match that larger-than-life image, even when it comes to fictional characters. You have to accept them as human beings. That was always the challenge with Boba Fett, the intimidating bounty hunter from the 1980s The Empire Strikes Back, whose masked face and reticence to speak gave Star Wars fans permission to imagine the worst, which actually made him more ominous and alluring. The more fans learned over the years, particularly about his origin in the prequel films, the more they questioned if they preferred the mystery. Fett seemingly met his demise in the 1983's Return of the Jedi, clumsily knocked into a maw of a giant sand sphincter with teeth. He died like a chump. Debate about his legacy raged on. Did he say sand sphincter? The article goes on to talk about his return and how instead of being a bloodthirsty capo, Temuera Morrison's reborn Fett proved to be a godfather of a more measured nature, one seeking power, but also peace and honor among the lawless. As usual with a fandom as vast as Star Wars, there was discord in the discourse. Some of the fans vented a frustration, Boba Fett survived all that only to go soft. Others saw much to like in the show. A mid-season shift of focus back to the lead character of The Mandalorian was widely praised, but also seen as an abrupt change in POV. All the while, the arguments continued. Should Boba Fett be more ruthless, or was his soulful self-reflection the right call? And this was something that I had to deal with when I was watching the show. Of course I want to see Boba Fett be a complete and total badass coming in, wrecking shop in every single scene of every part of the show. And to be honest with you guys, at the beginning of the series, I was completely fine with what we were getting with the Tusken Raiders. I hate the mods. But I was okay with him being beaten down to be built back up. I think my big problem was I don't feel like he really built back up. The article goes on to say, while Favreau turned to Francis Ford Coppola's Mob Saga for inspiration, director Robert Rodriguez, who helmed multiple episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, drew inspiration from the sword and sorcery barbarian tales of Robert E. Howard. We would talk to Robert about Conan, Favreau says. Conan starts off as a young warrior and then ages up through the books until he's Conan the King. So how is Boba, the crime lord, going to be different, knowing what he knows, than what he would have been when he was a younger man? And what do you guys think? Should he have been more ferocious? I think I would be. I understand what they're saying, and I understand the motives behind the storytelling. I just still feel like this could have been handled differently. I don't really see any reason why you can't be ferocious and gnarly while being wise. And I feel like at the beginning of his story here, when he's coming in and he's trying to take back over Tatooine, he wants to be the daimyo, which I thought it was really weird they kept using Japanese names for a lot of this different stuff. But I feel like he could have still been vicious, especially this early, just now coming back. I mean, what you set the tone for when you walk down the stairs into Jabba's palace and just absolutely waste somebody and throw them on the ground is a tone of violence and retribution. And if we're getting this messaging from Lucasfilm over and over and over about all killer, no filler, and the only thing we see is this brutal murder, you kind of set the tone. And so I always think it's funny when we have this debate as fans as to what our expectations should be going into a show. They set our expectations. And I think that was probably one of the worst things that they did with the Book of Boba Fett, other than the mods. They could have set the tone a little differently. Alas, the article goes on to briefly touch on Filoni, who got us started at Lucasfilm, creating the animated Clone Wars series with George Lucas. He agrees that fans buy into the myth of Boba Fett rather than accept that he was often more clever than he was combative. Boba Fett calls Darth Vader to capture Han Solo. He doesn't capture Han Solo. Filoni notes on Fett's big moment in Empire. He gets on the phone and he says, "Come here and get Han Solo. I found him." I always say, when in doubt, consistency is never a bad idea. Stay consistent with the character. We have to try new things to tell new stories. That's just the nature of storytelling. If we always had the same characters throughout the entirety of a story, nothing would ever change and it wouldn't be a very good story. But you have to be careful with these characters, especially characters where it's not written out exactly who they are, but there's a myth associated with them. I think it's important to kind of retain that myth status for the character. If you ground them too much, if you take it too far, fans are going to be upset. I was one of the fans who wasn't particularly stoked on where he went, but maybe we get something more from Boba Fett in the future. Maybe something that kind of smooths out the wrinkles that a lot of us have felt about Boba Fett. It's a tall order, but it's not impossible. This is X-Wing signing off for the day. May the Force be with you, and we'll see you on the next one.